that the secularist is now so determined to impose their lifestyle on our societies that the reaction is going to create a Sunday law, eventually, against the secularists, to bring the secularists, the leftists, these people that are way out there in their lifestyles, a long way from the Bible, they need to get back in church so that they can get some religion, since they have abandoned it in their own lives. You see? The focus of the Sunday laws initially is going to be to get everyone back in church, because once there are disasters that are imposed on the nation, once, by natural disasters, whatever they may be, we have some natural disasters in America that can be pretty devastating. Some places, you tend to be shielded to a certain extent here in Australia from a lot of natural disasters other than drought. We certainly have drought. Not today. Not today. No drought today. But there will come crises here in Australia that will push you to the edge, to the precipice. And people are going to say, we've got to get back to God. Now, Australia is kind of a secular country to begin with. It's quite different from America. And it's even quite different again from Europe. So, the Sunday law is going to be imposed first on secularists in order to get them back in church, to stem the tide of God's judgments on the land, as they will. So this is how they're going to say it. This is how they're going to impose it. But there will be a few people who will resist that, and they'll say, wait a second. That's not what the Bible teaches. Now, I hope you can see that you'll have opportunity with secular people to show them what the Bible actually says. Once they see that there's a law coming that requires them, of all people, to get back in church, which they don't want, that's the last thing that a liberal, secular person wants, is to have to go to church and all things. So if you say to them, you have to go back to church by law, they're going to say, wait a second, that's restricting my liberties. And it will. But you, as God's people, will then be able to show them that the Bible is the most relevant book on the planet. Hello? You with me? The Bible is the most relevant book on the planet. And it really troubles me when I hear young Adventists say to me, well, I don't know, the Bible doesn't seem that relevant to my life personally. That tells you something. They've missed something. Because it turns out that at the very time when when people are turning their backs on the Bible, and for that matter on Christ, because when you turn your back on the Bible, you also turn your back on Christ. People that turn their backs on the Bible are turning their backs on the most important thing that will help them navigate the crises that are coming. We need the Bible, my brothers and sisters. If you want to understand how to deal with the problems in your life, as well as the big issues, the global issues going on that affect you personally, and they will. The global issues that are going on today are going to affect every man, woman, and child on the planet. So we need the Bible. And by the way, I'll say it here, and I don't apologize for using the spirit of prophecy in the pulpit. Do you believe the spirit of prophecy is relevant? Yes. I'm amazed at what I read in the spirit of prophecy, and then all of a sudden I see it in the news. Amen. And I'm saying to myself, this fits. Turn with me in your Bibles now to Revelation chapter 13. I'm going to show you something about being on the precipice. understood about Bible prophecy is that at the end of time, there is going to be a Sunday law imposed, but in order to do that, you have to unite church and state. And America has been built on the principle of the separation of church and state. Right? The idea has even been adapted to Australia. And so you also have separation of church and state. For now. In a certain way. But you have just as much threat to your church and state as we do. For the separation. What I'd like to share with you today is that right now, as we sit here this morning, the mixing or the coming together of church and state in America is happening at a very rapid pace. Let's look at it from Revelation chapter 13. Come to verse 11. Revelation chapter 13, verse 11. You have your Bibles with you. If you don't, maybe you have it on your device. I have a Bible on my device I can look at and help me a little bit. When I preach from the pulpit, I've got to have this one right here. This is my treasure. This book is the most valuable treasure that you could ever have in your home. I don't mean just to sit there and let it rot on the table, but to study it. Maybe as you study it will lose some of its, the pages will tear or they get dirty or they might, but it's still the most valuable treasure. Revelation 13 verse 11 says, "And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon." What beast is this? That's the United States, okay? What was the first beast, by the way? There in verse 1, 2, and 3. 4. Huh? The papacy, that's right. Okay, so we know what these are. All right. Now, speaking of the United States, the Bible describes it as a lamb that becomes a dragon, or at least begins to speak as a dragon. This tells me that something is about to happen. Because in order to speak as a dragon, it has to do certain things that it would not have otherwise done. Look at verse 12. "He exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him." What is the first beast? Papacy. What power did the first beast have? Especially in the Middle Ages. What power did the first beast have? It had absolute, in many ways it did. But it also, I would describe it as having power over the state. The state and the church were mixed together, and consequently and inevitably, when you mix church and state together, you end up with persecution of those who refuse to go along with the established principles of church in the state. All right? Is that clear? So here it says that he exercises all the power of the first beast before him. That's persecuting power, my friends. And he causes the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast whose deadly wound was healed. Now, let's understand. The central issue in the last days, the mark of the beast, is not about a computer in Texas, as some people once taught. It's not a microchip that's put under your skin, although they have those available now. They're testing them and developing them right now. And perhaps there'll be some usefulness for them in terms of globalization. It is not anything else but what the Bible says it is. Revelation 13, 5 times tells us that the mark of the beast involves worship. The central issue is worship. You want to turn the mic up just a little with the extra sound or extra noise from the rain. In fact, we read about this in verse 4. Look at verse 4. It says they worship the beast. They worship the dragon, which gave power to the beast. And then the second time it says they worship the beast, saying who is like unto the beast. There's twice in one verse where we learn that worship is the central issue in the last days. And then we come to verse 8. All that dwell upon the earth shall what? Worship him. There's number 3. Verse 12 says that they causes the earth and them which dwell therein to worship. That's the 4th time. And then in verse 15 it says, he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should go speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. There's the 5th time. So 5 times in Revelation 13 we learn that the central issue in the last days is over worship. And that is, of all the 10 commandments, the most contested point. The 4th commandment. Worship the Creator. Worship the one who made all things. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Creator, the Lord thy God. Alright? The one who made you, the one who loves you, the one who has redeemed you. And he calls you to come and worship. You know, some people react. They don't want to go to church. They don't want to worship. They don't want to keep anything holy. They just think that they can live their secular lives and move on. But Jesus tells us that he wants us to love him, and love him so much that we will worship him with all our minds, all our hearts, all our strength, and all of our soul. In other words, with everything. We have to love him with everything, brothers and sisters. Nothing that we own. No personality characteristic. Belongs to anybody but him. And so if you have personality characteristics, I should say, that are not like Christ, Christ wants to remove them from you, so that you will be able to reflect his image in your life. At the very time when the darkest time comes upon the earth. We are a very dark time, aren't we? Now let's come back to verse 12. It says, he exercises all the power, the persecuting power of the first beast before him, and causes the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast whose deadly wound was healed. How is the United States going to create a worship law and eventually not only impose it on the United States, but it will be imposed universally around the world? How are they going to do that? They have to mix church and state together. You see? The Bible goes on to describe what happens, but I want you to just come down to verse 15. It says, he had power to give life unto the image of the beast. What is an image? It's something that looks like something else, right? So the image to the beast is a replica of the beast. Now, what characteristic about the beast causes persecution? It's the mixing of church and state. So, the image to the beast is going to be similar mixing of church and state. So we have Rome working in Europe to try to mix church and state, and Rome is working in America to try to mix church and state. How is that happening? Donald Trump was elected especially by the evangelicals, a group of more or less independent religious leaders in America. They were very skeptical about Mr. Trump at the very best when he bushwhacked his way to the Republican nomination. He got rid of all the competition. 16 other candidates for President of the United States. He knocked them all out, one after another. Eventually, after Super Tuesday, you know what Super Tuesday is? Super Tuesday is when they have 10 elections, primary elections, in 10 different states. So it's the big election day, Super Tuesday. And on Super Tuesday, Mr. Trump trounced them all and ended up, shortly after that, they all folded their campaign. There was only one, John Kasich from Ohio, that held on a bit longer. But eventually he folded his campaign as well. So Mr. Trump was the only one left. And then the Republican National Committee had no choice but to get behind it and nominate him. And he dominated the Republican Party. The evangelicals were very mixed in their opinion of him. The people loved Trump. Conservative people love Trump. The media does not love Trump. You know that, right? Your leftist media here in Australia does not love Mr. Trump, just like our leftist media in America. You know, they're no stooges, one or the other, you know? What the American media says, the Australian media parrots. You know, a good parrot likes to talk. Can parrot, imitate what you say, you know. You would know about parrots here in Australia, don't you? So, anyway, you only hear what the leftist media wants you to hear. You cannot trust them to give you the full story. By the way, you can't even trust the conservative media to give you the prophetic story. Where do you get the prophetic story from? Right here. You can't get an understanding of prophecy from the media. But you can use the media to help you identify the things that prophecy reveals will take place. And that's what our ministry at Keep the Faith is all about. We are all about, our little niche is all about linking current events to Bible prophecy so that you can see how that the things that the Bible has predicted thousands of years ago are now taking place in our time. Jesus wants you to know it. And by the way, Jesus and prophecy go together. You know, I had somebody tell me one time, we don't need prophecy. We need Jesus. What? What are you talking about? Prophecy comes from Christ. Prophecy is about Christ. Even the Sunday law is about Christ because it tests your loyalty, who you are loyal to, Christ or the enemy, which is it going to be? It's all about Christ, every bit of it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have given it to us. Now, the prognosticators out there, you know, the palm readers and their prophecies, Nostradamus and his prophecies and all that, you know, it's a mix of rubbish. Various types of rubbish, you know. But this is the solid stuff right here, my friend. Amen. This is the stuff that matters. The Bible and its corresponding spirit of prophecy contains everything we need to know to navigate the things that are coming upon the world. So Mr. Trump and the evangelicals had this sort of mixed bag sort of relationship. They weren't too sure about him. So two men, I'm not going to give you a lot of detail on this, but two men organized a meeting in New York at the Marriott Marquis back in June of 2016. These two men, Bill Dallas and your friend, Ben Carson. your fellow Adventist, Ben Carson, organized a meeting between the evangelicals and Mr. Trump. And they were planning on having 200 of the most influential, or inviting 200 of the most influential evangelicals in America to come and have a conversation with Mr. Trump. They weren't going to give Mr. Trump the pulpit just to preach to them or speak to them and give a political address. No. They wanted to have a conversation where Mr. Trump would sit down and relax and talk to them about the things that are important to them. In the end, nearly 1,000 people rocked up to that meeting by invitation. The invitation expanded and grew, and they keep having to get more, because there was so much, there was a tsunami of interest in this meeting from evangelicals around the whole country. So they had this meeting, and Mr. Trump promised them 3 things. He said, if you elect me as your president, I will give you 1, more power. Wow. More power? Evangelicals in power? What does that sound like? Political power, my friends, is the mixing of church and state when it's given to evangelicals. Secondly, he said, I will destroy is the word he used. I will destroy the Johnson Amendment. Most of you probably have no idea what the Johnson Amendment is, but that's okay, we'll tell you what it is. The Johnson Amendment is not an amendment to the Constitution, it is an amendment to the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service Code, which prevents religious leaders, anyone who is a 501c3 organization, which is a tax-exempt organization in America. That's the nomenclature they use. 501c3 is a section of a law that authorizes them to be nonprofit and have tax exemption and give tax exempt receipts for donations. Okay? So any 501c3 organization or its leaders cannot be involved in political campaigns for or against any political candidate. Okay? That's what the law says. The Johnson Amendment, it was brought into Congress back in 1954, which was a long time ago, by a man named Lyndon B. Johnson. You know who he was? He was a senator at the time. He became vice president with who? Lyndon B. Johnson. Kennedy, thank you, somebody got it. Yeah, John F. Kennedy. When Kennedy was assassinated, he then, by default, became president of the United States. Everybody knows him in that capacity, but they didn't realize that he was also a senator at one time, and he brought in this law, and of course it was passed. So, this has caused many evangelicals to think that they have their speech, their freedom of speech has been restricted, which is, of course, part of the First Amendment of the Constitution. So they have been complaining for years about this problem. So when Mr. Trump told them that he would destroy the Johnson Amendment, they perked up their ears and they began to listen. In doing so, he was essentially promising to restore religious freedom to America. Because religious freedom had been under assault for a long time. It had been, under the Obama administration, there were a number of things that had happened that had begun to restrict the freedom of religious people from living their convictions in the marketplace. Same-sex marriage was one of them. And as lawsuits mounted one after another against Christian businesses for refusing to serve same-sex weddings, for instance, evangelicals and conservatives in America became very disturbed, so disturbed that an appeal to restoring religious freedom by a political candidate would be a very strong appeal to them. The third thing he promised to do was to elect conservative judges to federal judgeships. Now there's several levels of it. It's not just the Supreme Court. There's several levels of appellate courts, as they call them. And these are nominated by the president, and they are confirmed by the Senate. So you've been reading about Brett Kavanaugh? I tell you what, I don't remember any time in my whole life when so much wicked display of sin has been publicly reviewed by the press. I mean, it's nasty stuff. It's the nastiest stuff I've ever seen. Now, these are the accusations that they make against Brett Kavanaugh. Whether they're true or not, we don't really know. And by the way, the FBI report for this week, the extension of that and the report that was the result of it has virtually yielded no evidence of corroboration of the allegations that have been made against him. I will talk to you about Brett Kavanaugh later on today in more detail. I believe that he's actually a very dangerous judge from a prophetic point of view. From a regular political point of view, he is the cat's meow. From a purely political point of view, and a purely conservative point of view, he would be the cat's meow. For the liberals, he's a nightmare. But for the conservatives, he is their man. All right? Now, I don't take sides on politics. I understand. I take side with prophecy. I take side with Jesus. Because it's Jesus who's given us these prophecies to help us understand our times, right? I mean, it's amazing to me how much detail we have in the Bible about what to expect in the last day. It's incredible. I don't take sides on political matters, because that is pointless. We're not to be involved in political campaigns. We're not to get involved in partyism and partisan politics. Those things we are forbidden as God's people to engage in. We're not even supposed to vote for parties or for people, according to the Spirit of prophecy. We have a much higher calling, brothers and sisters. That calling is to give the three angels messages under the power of the Holy Spirit in the latter rain. How can we do that if we're involved in politics, which causes us to sin? If you get involved in political matters, my friends, sooner or later it's going to lead you into sin against your fellow man and against God. You may not see that connection so easily, but just think about it a little bit. And all the anger and the things that are said, the way they're said, it's sinful. You compromise your soul if you get involved in politics. But friends, we have a much higher calling, and that is the prophecies. Because the prophecies are designed to help us understand the end times in which we live. And as these things unfold, we're right on the precipice. We've got to be paying attention to those things. Now, the evangelicals that had already decided against Mr. Trump at the time of this meeting in June of 2016 changed their mind, and they said, okay, we are open-minded. And in the end, they supported Mr. Trump. And now they're in the White House giving him counsel and advice and guidance right, left, and center. Those who were skeptical at the beginning of that meeting ended up in favor, and they voted for him as well. And so, like a tidal wave, Americans from the major portion of the country, which is mostly the rural areas, came out in massive numbers and elected him president. Actually, Hillary Clinton had the majority. You have to understand politics to understand this. She had the majority vote, but he had the majority of the Electoral College, which levels the playing field. You see, if we didn't have the Electoral College, the big cities, the big liberal cities on the east and west coasts would be the ones that determine the president. And these have all the liberals in them. And that's where the liberals concentrate, around the big cities. No wonder the big cities are going to be under a lot of pressure in the last days. You know. But not just the big cities. It will also be the rural areas as well, in countries that are the target of the enemy for Sunday laws. Anyway, so Mr. Trump became president of the United States, and he began to fulfill his promises. He's not a politician that says one thing and does another, you know? Right? You know, that's how politicians are, right? You have them here as good. You can't trust them, right? What they offer you when they're in the campaign trail is something quite different from what they do once they're in office. They have all their excuses and all their reasons for everything they do, you know. But bottom line is, Mr. Trump is not a politician. He is a businessman. And he fulfills his promises to the best of his ability as a businessman. You know, the share market I was telling somebody this morning, the share market was very interesting to watch at this point in time, because everybody was banking on Hillary. And all the share market investors were investing in ways that would benefit them if Hillary won. But when Mr. Trump got it instead, by surprise, shock, they had to scramble to readjust their share investments. And they thought, okay, so now that Mr. Trump is in the office, then the share markets are probably going to go down, because Mr. Trump is going to likely lose traction, economic traction, and well, we better adjust so that we can accommodate for that. But what happened to the American economy? Well, let me ask you, what's happened to the Aussie dollar? The dollar has been tanking, right? That means that the American economy is going up. And now they have to scramble again and reorganize themselves in the share market once again. It's been very interesting. They had to recover a lot of losses. It's only interesting because that's just one of the effects. From a prophetic point of view, it really means very little, except that the economy has a lot to do with how people view their president in the United States. So if it's a good economy, they view him as a good president. Now the media can't stand that. They hardly talk about how good the economy is going these days. Because they want everything they say to be negative about Mr. Trump. They're not willing to present the facts as they are. I'm talking about the liberal media. So most conservatives don't get their news from the liberals, the liberal media. They get it from the conservatives. And they now have the tools and mechanisms. I'm talking about conservative politicians and conservative political organizations now have the tools to use that can directly communicate to the conservative mind in America through the organizations that they are connected to. Most conservative people are donors, for instance, to conservative organizations, religious organizations, and others, right? So now they know how to talk to them through those organizations. They don't have to have a big campaign out there in the mainstream press, because they don't get a fair shake anyway. They know they have to come up with other alternatives. So that's what they've done, you see. And I find it extremely interesting how they have done this. And I don't want to get into a lot of detail today because it just bogs us down. But it's interesting just because it has a huge influence on them. People that they trust. If you donate to someone, you trust that person, right? You wouldn't donate if you didn't trust them. So if you donate to somebody, you trust them. And these are the people that are talking to those voters out there from the organizations that they trust. That is powerful. So Mr. Trump has now taken these evangelicals, these evangelical leaders. Some of them are pastors of mega churches that have 25,000 members or more. Paul White, one of Mr. Trump's closest advisors, is the pastor of a mega church in Apopka, Florida, with 25,000 members. Robert Jeffress, another very close advisor to Mr. Trump, is a Texas megachurch pastor who has over 35,000 members in his church. Can you imagine that? The influence that these pastors have over their people is enormous. And it's not just 35,000 or 25,000 or whatever thousand member churches they have. It's not just on those people. It goes beyond that. It goes into many other levels. And they are doing the very thing that Bible prophecy has revealed to us that is going to take place in the last days. They are going to unite church and state. The Bible says in verse 15, He had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Oh, my friends, what an amazing prophecy that is. You cannot have a Sunday law in America without the control of the government by the religious right. Now, you may remember that back in the 1980s there was a man named Jerry Falwell. Right? Remember him? Jerry Falwell established the moral majority, and it really started to get traction for a short period of time, and it collapsed. And I wondered to myself, why did that collapse? The reason it collapsed is because these religious right individuals, people who were in the moral majority, as they styled themselves, were people that were involved in their various churches, but they had so many doctrinal differences one with the other that they could not work together. They would fight with each other rather than collaborate with each other. All right? That's back in the 1980s. That's 30 years ago. 30 years ago. So it all collapsed. What were they going to do? So they've been dormant now for about 30 years. And now Jerry Falwell is in his grave. And his son, Jerry Falwell Jr., has taken his place. And he is now one of the president's closest advisors. No, we don't have the moral majority anymore in America. But we have something far more significant. You see, in those intervening 30 years, Rome has taught the evangelicals how to get along in spite of their doctrinal differences. In those 30 years, they have learned from Rome how to connect with Rome. And they're all connected to Rome. How many of these evangelical pastors have been off to the Vatican now in just the last few years since Pope Francis? You have Rick Warren from Saddleback Church in California. You have Joel Osteen from the, what do they call that church in Houston? They have many of these other mega church pastors. They've all gone to visit the Pope or be involved in some papal conference or some making speeches, and all sorts of interaction between them and the Vatican. They have learned how to lay aside their doctrinal differences with Rome so that in social projects. This is the key underlying principle, my friends, of the ecumenical movement. Okay? So now these very individuals have come to the point where they have also realized, under Rome's instruction, and by the way, whatever I say up here, I can document from credible sources. I don't want you to misunderstand that. What we do at Keep the Faith is document. Before we publish, we document. Before we say anything, we document. We make sure that everything we say is documentable from credible sources, including the horse's mouth. And something. Or the kangaroo's lips. I don't know, maybe you don't use that expression. Maybe we can coin that a new expression. Right from the kangaroo's lips. I saw two kangaroos out back this morning boxing this morning. That was interesting. I've never seen that before live. That was interesting. Anyway, it reminded me of two politicians. Here we are, my friends. We're on the precipice. The United States is now bringing church and state together, just as Jesus told us they would. And Jesus told us that at the time when John the Apostle was writing the book of Revelation. It makes the book of Revelation come alive right in front of our eyes as we see these things unfold. And I'm thrilled by this. You know, anyone who's not in Christ would be scared to death about the things that are taking place in the world today. But guess what? If you are in Christ, there is no fear. In Christ, there is no fear, brothers and sisters. We live in a time when we need Jesus to stand by our side. And He will. He promises to do that. If you're in Christ, He will do it. So let go of anything that isn't right. You don't have to hang on to anything that is going to get in the way of your relationship with Jesus, because that's the only relationship that matters in the last days. Only relationship with Christ matters. It even matters more than your relationship with your spouse. Pardon me. I'm not advocating that you get into strife with your spouse. But it happens nevertheless. You know, I recently met a young woman who came to volunteer at our place in Victoria. When she became a Christian, her husband left her. Because he didn't want to be a Christian, he didn't want her to be a Christian. And before the judge, he painted her as such an evil woman that the judge awarded all 5 of her small children to her husband. Terrible. And she's the one pursuing God. She has been through it, full, for quite some time. Bless her heart. I hope she can recover and will survive all of that. But anyway, she just needed some time away and needed to have a break and do something else for a while to keep her mind off of her circumstances. And anyway, so we pray for her. I dare not give you her name. So just pray for that young woman. She's a dear soul that just needs prayer to give God freedom to restore her and perhaps even restore the lost years. Anyway, coming back to our study this morning, Revelation 13 is telling us that the uniting of church and state is going to happen, and now it's happening. Under Mr. Trump, it is becoming a reality. Are you there? Are you ready? Friends, we're on the precipice. Not only that, I'm going to talk to to you this afternoon I'm going to talk to you about censorship a little bit. A censorship process of conservative thought and ideas is now underway in social media. In other words, politically incorrect ideas are being removed or minimized on social media so they cannot be seen or heard or will not likely be seen or heard. How do you think that will affect the proclamation of God's message, the messages through social media and the internet and the web? And this is not government censorship, this is censorship by private organization. Google is a private organization. It owns YouTube. And Google is now systematically restricting conservative content, demonetizing conservative content. What does that mean, demonetize? That means you can't use video to collect money from ads. You know how when you look at a YouTube, there's an ad before you can watch it? That's money to the person who created the YouTube. We don't do ads with YouTube or keep it fair. So we don't get a lot of traction. Maybe we should do ads because that will actually boost our rating. But then we say things that are politically incorrect. That will knock us back down again. In fact, I'll tell you now, Keep the Faith has already been censored at least once on YouTube. They took down a YouTube presentation that I did on same-sex marriage and the effect it has on society. And they warned us. They said if you get two more censored in 6 months' time, or within 6 months, we'll shut down your whole channel. Wow. Well, that's interesting. Well, I haven't done anything on YouTube for a while on same-sex marriage. But just recently, before coming to Australia, I did a whole series of videos, and one of them was about same-sex marriage. That was a little more than 6 months since the last one, so maybe if I can censor it again. But it's already happening, my friends. That's what I'm trying to say. Conservative voices, politically incorrect voices, are now being removed from their social media sites, and their content is being restricted or banned or just whatever. And so it cannot be heard. You see what's happening? The enemy is using all kinds of methods and means that he can to make it impossible for you to be able to give the three angels' messages. Right? He wants to put you in a corner, to box you in so that you can't move. And if you do, you'll get your head flat or your neck cut off or whatever. Notice it says in verse 15, if you don't worship the image of the beast, you will be under a death penalty. Should be killed, is the way the Bible says. So, my friends, we're on the precipice. And as each day goes by, we will see more and more ways in which our liberties are being adjusted and changed. And ultimately, right now it's not focused on Seventh-day Adventists, but as I look at these things taking place, it isn't difficult. It's not a difficult leap. It's merely a small step so that you can see that they can take that small step and that focus can change very quickly and become focused on God's people. And their message is designed to bring people to Christ. to get them ready for the second time. My friends, I urge you today, pay attention to Bible prophecy in the current events. If you're not a subscriber to Keep the Faith, become one. You will be very surprised how much there is going on in the world today that is directly related to the fulfilling prophecies that God has given us in the Bible and the spirit of prophecy. Number 2, surrender your life to Christ, my friends. It sounds very simplistic. It almost sounds so repeated that we say, oh that's what we should do. We kind of make it sort of superficial. But I'm saying very sincerely, very deeply, surrender your life to Christ. That means in every area, no matter what you do, it means everything. If Jesus doesn't control it, my friends, you're going to be in difficulty in the very near future. Because your faith is going to come under very severe accusation and misrepresentation. If you're not in Christ, what you're going to do? You're going to flee. You're going to get in your car, you're going to drive right past the church on Saturday morning and go off to whatever else you're going to do. And right at this very time, my friends, we need Jesus more than ever. We need to understand His word for us. So may God bless you, my friends. May you keep the faith in your heart and mind, your soul, and your experience until Jesus comes. Kevin, do you want me to close with prayer, or are you going to do something? I'll sit down and let somebody else take over. Thank you.